Geeks and geekettes. This is Chuck Dixon back for another edition of Chuck Dixon, where I share my vast amount of knowledge and many, many years of experience inside the comic book business with you, the discerning comic book consumer, the sine non qua of pop culture influencers. I just made all of these sound so important, right? Because I make myself sound so damn important. But all I do is write comic books, and it is it's what I do. It's the only thing I do well. Trust me. Don't ever ask me to make a home repair. We will be making a trip to the emergency room. Okay, let's just get started here with the first of your many awesome questions. Milos Militic. I am trying to pen a comic story and I'm currently working on, but I never got beyond the initial pages. The reason? Dialogue. I can't crack that up. And the thought of doing a story without dialogue balloons is unthinkable. So how do you know what words you'll type in dialogue balloons? How do you know what words characters will spurt on the page? Does it come naturally to you? Or do you spend a great deal of time going through it until you are satisfied with the results? I sweat dialogue. Sometimes it comes easy, sometimes it comes hard. But be prepared to go back and rewrite. And as I've said over and over and over again, especially when writing dialogue, the question every writer has to ask themselves every day, all the time, as they put down each line is there a better way to say this? Never go with your first instinct. Unless it's good. I mean, you can have a good first instinct, but always in the back of your mind, you may go with your first instinct, but first ask yourself, is there a better way to say this? And then there's all kinds of other things to think about with dialogue, and I'm going to make it sound intimidating and everything else, but I'm going to show you how you can work to intuit dialogue. How you can intuit what is good dialogue and what is bad dialogue. And then you'll find your own style. You'll find your own brand of writing, how people talk. So you got to think about voice. Each character has to sound distinctly different. And it can be very, very, very subtle. It can just be phrasing or certain word usages, or do they talk a lot or talk very little? Are they Liza Minnelli or Clint Eastwood? And then character. Their dialogue has to reflect their character. Also, don't write dialogue if there's no dialogue needed. Every panel doesn't need some witty quip, and stay away from witty quips anyway. If you're too arch, too clever in your dialogue, you're going to be tempted to have everybody speak that way, and everybody's got the same voice. And it's an episode of Friends, which was fine for Friends, but it's not fine for comics. So your dialogue, you need to reflect character, you need to reflect voice, and also it has to be germane to what's going on, but don't mention what's going on. And never have your character express their emotions in words, because that's the artist's job. Tell the artist, make this girl look really, really sad, or make this guy look, envious, but don't have the guy saying, I'm so jealous of you. Let the artist do that. Have the guy say, I'm so happy for you. And in the face, obviously, he's not happy at all. Isn't that more clever? Isn't that a better way of saying that? Because remember, the art says something too. And when you're doing comics, it is a collaboration. You and the artist working together to make the story work. And you've got to leave the artist room to do that. And of course, comics is a visual medium. It's a visual medium first. That's what draws us to comics. It's not the words like, oh, look what that guy said in that word balloon. I want to read this comic. No. It's like, look at that guy punching that planet in half. I got to read this. And the dialogue all comes later. And if you're a good writer, no one will notice the dialogue. The best writers are the invisible hand writers. The lamest writers are the ones you notice the writing. in my opinion. But there are fans who like writers who write stuff you notice. It's because they're reading it for the writing, I guess. I'm reading it for the medium, the combination of words and pictures. So you want to let the artist do some of the lifting, and he's perfectly willing to do the lifting, he or she. That's their job. They're proud. They're going to have their name on this too. They want to do a good job. Now, there's things about dialogue that you'll learn as you go along. One of them is the reversal. I love the reversal, but you don't want to overuse it. Best example I can think of the reversal is the scene in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. If you've never seen the movie, I'll set it up for you. They're running from a posse, and they get to the edge of like a canyon, and there's nowhere to go. The posse's closing in, and they're down on a rocky ledge, and there's a river, hundreds of feet beneath them. And their only chance of escape is to jump. And here's where Robert Redford reveals, I can't swim. Now Paul Newman has spent like a minute and a half trying to convince Robert Redford that they have to jump. Robert Redford's like, no, I'm not jumping. Totally refusing. He is not going to jump. And then finally, as his closing argument reveals, I can't swim. And, here's a great example of, how can I say this better? Paul Newman's response is, well, hell, the fall will kill you. That's a reversal. That's the last thing. He's trying to convince him to jump. That's the last thing you expect out of Newman's mouth. Huge laugh. Every time I saw it with an audience, got the biggest laugh of the movie because it comes as such a surprise. And that's how humor works. That's how dialogue should work as well. Dialogue should sound like the characters just thought of it. And so you see, that's how you keep dialogue going. And it all accomplished the same thing. Eventually they both jump and survive all the way to the very end of the movie, but not beyond. Don't mean to spoil that for you. But if you haven't seen Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid, you deserve to have it spoiled for you. Should have seen that movie by now. So, and then you've got to think about exposition. How much do your characters reveal to each other through exposition? Because you've got to get information across. But you don't want to get it across directly. You don't want to bore the viewer or listener or reader by thinking that they're being lectured something, told something. Think about when you were a kid and they were going to show you something educational. It's like your brain shut off immediately. It's like, I'm rejecting this. I don't want to watch anything or listen to anything educational. But if they showed you something educational without telling you it was educational, you might actually absorb some of it. And really, that's what's going on in dialogue that reveals plot or whatever. Nobody ever directly mentions the plot. You learn through natural exchanges. And by natural, I don't mean realistic, but realistic dialogue is for the birds, because nobody wants to read or listen to or watch something where the people are talking like normal people talk, because we could get that watching normal people. You could stand in line at Target and get that dialogue. The dialogue that moves and lives and breathes and imparts information. I like to say it's a fine art, but I can do it. I'm no fine artist. I just intuited it over consuming lots of things with dialogue and then consuming them again. And then consuming them again. And it's like, how did they achieve that? How did I learn that from this exchange? What did the writer do here to give me all the information I needed in order to understand the characters, the events, the unfolding whatevers. Now, there are things to avoid. Avoid David Mamet. I love David Mamet's writing. Most writers love David Mamet's writing. But you cannot write like David Mamet. Now, David Mamet is famous or infamous, depending on who you talk to, by his dialogue. It's very idiosyncratic. My wife can do she can turn any conversation into a David Mamet conversation, and often does, to make fun of me, because I like Mamet so much and she doesn't like Mamet. but she will, you know, she does a great David Mamet mimic. And I'm, you know, 3 exchanges into the conversation before I realize she's done it to me again. So David Mamet's a great writer. Not every actor can speak his lines and make them sing. Al Pacino, Gene Hackman come to mind. Some great actors have fallen trying to do Mamet dialogue and making it sound like real people talking. So stay away from Mamet. A lot of comic writers are enamored of Mamet. I'm one of them, but I would never imitate the guy. But a lot of comic writers thought, oh, I can do that. That looks easy. No, it's not easy because you're not David Mamet. David Mamet explains in a series of essays how he came about the particular patois his characters use, and it's idiosyncratic to him. Do not imitate it. If you try to imitate it, you're going to sound like Dollar Store Seinfeld. So stay away from David Mamet, until later. When you learn how to do dialogue better and you've done a bunch of dialogue, then watch Mamet and appreciate what he does. But don't try to do what he does. This is a huge mistake. Another thing to avoid is, especially in comics, especially now if you're writing for TV, it's a different thing because these kinds of scenes are required. In comics, they're death. And I see them in comics all the time and they're useless. First of all, characters sitting around eating because the writer can't think of anything else they could be doing. You know, riding on a bus, surfing, hang gliding, hunting bears. You know, no, they're eating at a bistro. You know, some hipster place. No, don't write those scenes. But the worst thing about those scenes is that nothing happens during them. We've all seen this. Every television show does this. Every episode of every network television show does this. 2 characters will talk about a third character who's not there. And I don't mean anything important like, I'm so sad that Johnny just died, or, do you think Bill's coming to kill us? No, that's okay. But I'm worried about Barry scenes where the 2 characters talk about Barry who's not there. And, they're worried about his emotional state and basically just sort of fill time. And that's the whole point of these scenes, is to fill time. They're cheaper to shoot than action. 2 people sitting on a set pretending to eat while they talk for 5 minutes is the way some of these shows come in on budget. because then they can afford to do the run and shooting and driving around in car scenes. This allows them to do that. So don't write these scenes in comics. A lot of comic writers see it in TV because they want to write for TV. And they think, well, you need a scene like this. No, you don't need any scenes like that. Don't write them. There's lots of stuff. The best advice I can give you, there's a series of books, and look for them. Some of them really expensive, but it's an awesome series of books. I've recommended them over and over again. I cannot recommend them highly enough. It's a series of books called Backstory, and they're interviews with screenwriters. And the series goes from the silent era all the way up to the 90s. It's awesome because the screenwriters talking about writing, and a lot of what they talk about is dialogue, how they approach dialogue, how they collaborated with the director, how they collaborated with the actor. And I can't think of any better books to read. Do not read how-to books. Do not read. Now, there's some story. There's some books called Backstory that they're about screenwriting. No. You don't want them. You just want Backstory 1, Backstory 2, Backstory 3, Backstory 4. Any of them. Find the cheapest one and buy it. They're all going to be good. It's all going to be great screenwriters, and they're going to tell you their secrets, their little anecdotes. These books are page turners. These are fascinating interviews with creative people, and screenwriters, they're all about dialogue. So this is the best tutelage I can possibly recommend to you. So I hope that helps. But don't be afraid of dialogue. Don't be afraid. You can always go back and rewrite. And you can always go back and rewrite when you've seen the art. I've done that a number of times. I see the art and I go, this line can be shortened, or it's not necessary, or whatever, because the artist has imparted the idea of the panel without me needing to have the character say anything or say as much as I had them say. Gentle Savage. And finally, this is a leftover question. Sorry, Gentle. It's a leftover question from a series of 3 from another episode. Anyway, and finally, have there ever been any characters that you wanted to use in a particular story that Marvel or DC told you were off limits? The most maddening one I can think of is the Wraith. The Wraith was a Batman villain created to be like the anti-Batman. And I know he's made recent appearances because for whatever reason that we couldn't use him, those, the rules changed. But for the longest time, his one and only appearance was in this Batman special, written by Mike Barr, drawn by Michael Golden. And it's a great story if you can find it. And for years afterwards, at every Bat Summit, we would basically we'd split the villains up. I want to use the Penguin. I have some ideas for the Riddler. I want to use Ventriloquist. Blah, 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 blah. Every summit, one of the writers, either Doug or Alan or myself, would say, what about the Wraith? And then we'd be told, no, not the Wraith. Nobody can use the Wraith. You can't use the Wraith. Why? Well, you just can't use him. we would never be told why we couldn't use the Wraith. And as I've told you before in these videos, it's apt that DC Comics had a comic book called The House of Secrets because it was the House of Secrets. Marvel was the House of Ideas and DC was the House of Secrets. There are always these sweetheart deals, particularly made in the 70s and early 80s, with creators where you couldn't use this character, or you could use the character, but you couldn't mention their name on the title. Or you couldn't mention their name on the cover. And just weird stuff like that. Like these deals that have been made for whatever reason. And we were never told the reason. And apparently the editors were not allowed to tell us the reason. So to this day, I don't know why we couldn't use the Wraith. And we all desperately wanted to use him because he was basically a Punisher type character in Batman garb. Just an awesome character to use. I mean, he should have been a mainstay. The Wraith could have been right there in the main group of villains. But we weren't allowed to use him, which I guess I should be happy about because he would have been a natural fit for Nightfall in place of Bane, but instead we created a new character. So I guess I should be happy we were never allowed to use the Wraith because he would have been the perfect guy to break Batman's back. It's just a logical choice. Ryan Howard, whose idea was it to make Bane's PED of choice? That's a new term, the PED. I haven't been able to figure that one out. Anyway, I guess drug of choice. Venom. Did you and Graham want to bring it into the mainline books, or did Denny O'Neil suggest that you guys use it? Denny had established it in an arc in Legends of the Dark Knight, and he very much wanted us to use it for Bane. And he felt that it gave Bane an edge, but it also gave Bane a weakness, because in the end, Bane is an addict. And it was a flaw that he needed to cheat. Despite everything he did, despite all of his intellect, and despite all of his strength and toughness, he still felt he needed to cheat to beat Batman. And that makes him a bad guy. That makes him a villain. That makes him flawed and made him interesting. And I thought it was a terrific aspect of the character, plus the visual of him, amping up, pumping more venom into his system and all the rest of it. Is a terrific visual and makes him a frightening character because, if you've ever been around people who are steady drug users, their personality changes entirely. They're no longer the person you thought they were. And in the case of Bane, that would be frightening. That, this guy who's already hugely powerful and great intellect, suddenly there's no restraints on him, no inhibitions. He's just totally psychotic, not so crazy. So anyway, that was all Denny's idea, and thank you, Mr. O'Neil. It was an awesome idea, as it turns out. Cecil Gilmore, what was the first and last comic you wrote for DC? Now, the first comic I wrote was the first issue of the Robin miniseries that Tom Lyle and I worked on. Boy, talk about coming in strong. You know, um, when I was brought on this title by Denny O'Neil, it was basically he liked what I did on Airboy. He liked how I wrote a young character. And so they brought me in on this one, and we bashed some ideas around and came up with something we liked, and I wrote it. And at the time, they thought it would do okay. Prediction was it would sell around 175,000 copies because that's what the recent launch of the Catwoman series had sold, and it sold a whole lot more than that because apparently you folks wanted to have a Robin back, and you really liked Tim Drake, and you bought a whole bunch of these. It was just hugely popular and basically started my career in the bat offices. Now, if you're talking my 11-year period writing Batman-related titles at DC, the last comic I wrote was Birds of Prey number 46 in that period. So this is the alpha and omega of my 11-year career at DC. I wrote this while I was still at CrossGen. I had been given a dispensation that I could complete my obligations to DC. So I think I wrote this, I believe, in March of 2002. And I was already working at CrossGen full time, but I was allowed to complete my obligation to DC. That was in my contract. I would be allowed to do that. Now, the very last thing I've written for DC recently was I did an 8-pager in this Catwoman 100-page super special. And they called me and said, would you like to write a Catwoman story? I'm like, I don't know. I said, Kelly Jones is going to draw it. And I said, yes. So I'd never worked with Kelly before. We knew each other, obviously in the bat offices and all the rest. For years, never worked with him. And boy, we had fun. We had fun on this, writing a classic 90s Catwoman story. It's an 8 or 10 pager featuring Clayface, a character I'd never written before, but I got Kelly Jones, man. I'm writing Clayface. I'm writing some kind of horror-based character for sure. And it was a fun story to write. But that's the very last thing I've ever written for DC, and maybe the last thing ever. Who knows? Kevin McDougall. How would you recommend see, this is number 1 here, so you know there's going to be more. How would you recommend approaching writing a genre that you aren't particularly interested in but have a great idea about? I would to quote the President of the United States, don't. If you don't like the genre, you're not interested in the genre, chances are you're not going to do that good a job. Chances are that if you don't like the genre, you don't understand the nuances of it. You don't understand what makes a good story in that genre and what doesn't. I would say if you have a great idea for something in a genre you don't like, find somebody that you know who does like that genre, who writes, and tell them the idea. And maybe they'll give you, maybe you can arrange a co-credit or something like that. But I can't imagine writing in a genre. I mean, if someone were to say, if I got a great idea for a fantasy by the pound book, I wouldn't write it because I don't like that genre. I would probably tell it to someone I knew who does write fantasy by the pound. I know a few people that write fantasy by the pound. So if I had a great idea, and chances are they would go, yeah, that idea is okay. Oh, I always remember Charles Schultz only ever took one idea from anybody for a strip in the 50 years that he did Peanuts. And he said he regretted it because he said the strip wasn't very funny. He just did it to be nice. But yeah, if it's a genre you're not interested in, I don't know, how do you get interested in a genre you're not interested in? I can see where if you weren't aware of the genre before, it's like, well, I've never seen a samurai movie before, but I watched one last night and I think they're awesome. And then you learn more about it. But if you like, I had to watch this rom-com with my wife and I hate them. Well, don't try to write a rom-com because apparently you don't share an appreciation for them that the fans of rom-coms share. Personally, a good rom-com is great, although a good rom-com is very, very rare these days. They don't seem to know how to write them anymore. This subject will come up later. Kevin McNoodle, how do you world build without having huge amounts of exposition to explain the world to the reader? Look, you build the world ahead of time. You can build the world as you go along. I often do that. But you build the world ahead of time, and then you understand it. You are walking around in it. You understand everything about it. And then you set your characters in motion within that world. And then you make sure that we learn about that world organically, not by somebody explaining it all to us. I mean, think about Star Wars and how much information is imparted at the very beginning of the first Star Wars film to make us understand. But remember, you're watching Star Wars. There's no way you can know everything about the Star Wars universe. It's kind of pretty clearly mapped out who the good guys and who the bad guys are. But then you learn as you go along, and that's what makes a universe deep. That's what we're exploring, that universe. When Luke leaves Tatooine, and even on Tatooine, we are with him exploring his world, and we're seeing things with him for the first time. And just seeing things, not having anybody explain anything about them or anything else. And if you think about it, the dialogue explaining things like who the Sand People are and things like that, what the Empire is, what's going on with the rebellion. This is all explained in sort of toss away dialogue. I mean, in the opening scenes of Star Wars, once we get past the Princess Leia scene, the main concern seems to be, the evaporators, getting parts for them. And getting a new droid. It's they could have called it Farm Wars in the first 10 minutes of the film, because that seems to be the main concern, keeping the farm going. Of course, we know as a moviegoer, this is a setup, but it's done well enough that it kind of, by them talking about their concerns about farming and Luke's resistance and wanting to go to the academy and all the rest, very natural conversation that been had around a lot of kitchen tables, even ones where they weren't drinking blue milk. And it's perfectly natural and relatable and everything else. It imparts a lot of information without you really realizing that it's set up. And what you're talking about when you're talking about dialogue to build a universe, that's all set up. And you must do your best to hide setup so the audience isn't going, yeah, they showed us that hairpin for a reason. That's going to come into play later. You don't want the audience knowing that, because audiences are really, really smart, both comic audiences, movie audiences, TV audiences. We're smart. We understand. We speak film, we speak comics as a second language, and you can't fool us. So if you're going to set something up, if you're going to explain a world, if you're going to have expository dialogue, you have to find some other way to slip it in there where they're imparting information to you about one thing while they seem to be talking about something else. The terrific scene in The Big Sleep where Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall are talking about horse racing, but they're obviously not talking about horse racing. Or you can write like Christopher Nolan. So watch old movies, because old movies were all about story, 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 story. Even though they treated their writers like crap, the writers are the most important people in Hollywood. The producers knew that. That's why they treated them like crap, because they could. Plus, they were interchangeable. If you weren't getting that Barton Fink feeling from the writer you had, you just grabbed another one from somewhere. Magazines, pulps, Broadway. Anyway, if I was a teacher giving homework, I would give the homework of find the movie Easy Living. Jean Arthur, Edward Arnold, Ray Milland, 1937. I can hear a bunch of you going, oh, no, it's in black. I bet it's in black and white. I have a hobby where I'll watch old movies. I love old movies. I'll watch old movies with my wife, and I will watch the time at the beginning of the film for how long it takes to set up the characters and situation of the film, right? Easy Living is a really complex, nuanced story. It's a comedy of manners, mistaken identity. It for the 1930s, it's a little bit risque. Um, and it's all set up in 5 minutes. I mean, a lot of information is imparted in 5 freaking minutes. We meet all the characters, and they don't know each other up to they meet. Complications ensue that will resonate throughout the rest of the entire film, and it's Preston Sturges, so it's excellent screenplay, um, and it's a fun screwball comedy, classic screwball comedy of the 30s, and and the reason why I say watch old movies is because they had shorter running times. They knew they had to engage you immediately because you'd walk out of the theater. Back in the day, you went and watched an evening's entertainment. There'd be cartoons and newsreels and a double feature and a this and a that and the other thing. And if you were hour and a half into the evening of entertainment and the movie wasn't thrilling you, you think I'm leaving. So they had to hold you, they had to hook you, so that you would tell others, and others would go see the movie. Very simple marketing. But it's why, in the golden age of Hollywood, 30s and 40s, movies got up off the blocks in the first, inside the first 7 or 8 minutes, and engaged the audience, just grabbed them by the lapels and made them watch the rest of the thing. So yeah, if I was given homework, I would say find the movie Easy Living, and at least give the first 5 minutes a look so you understand what I'm talking about. Kevin McDougall again. When you have a great idea for a story, do you ever get an involuntary response like the hair standing up on the back of your neck? I hear a cash register. No, I'm joking. No, it is a kick. It is a kick to get that idea. Whoa, hey, this would be great. And it can be a whole brand new idea for a whole new project, or it can be the idea that really makes the project you're working on now click. This is why I always say work well ahead of schedule, because you'll have that kind of breathing room in your writing schedule to walk away from things. Like, this is okay, but doesn't have that Barton Fink feeling. So I'm going to walk away for a little bit. I'm going to go do it now. I'm going to mow the lawn, take a walk, take a nap, whatever. Get on the treadmill for a while, and just kind of leave this behind. But in the back of my head, it's still ticking away, and then think, okay, this is the idea, this is the angle, this makes it work, and you go back and you rewrite and fill it in and everything else. This is what makes it click. This is the better way of doing this, and that's a great feeling. The other great feeling is when you're done writing, but it's not exhilarating. It's more like, I gotta lay down. I'm tired. I've done things. I think it was Hemingway who said it's better to have written than to write. And it is. It's a great feeling. I must just, I love writing. And I do love writing. And it's this totally involving experience. For some reason, it's exhausting. I mean, maybe not physically, but mentally. And when you're done writing, it's like, oh man, I earned this. I'm just going to lay in the sun, or float in the pool for a while, because I worked hard. and that damn thing's finally finished, particularly prose. Comics, not so much, because comics aren't that hard for me to write. But prose, when you're done prose, I mean, that's like a month, 2 months of steady work. And to get that done is, to me, a great accomplishment. Anybody that can write a complete book, don't scoff at it. It's hard, unless you use AI. John Bua, it seems self-inserts are all the rage these days. Who is your self-insert? Punisher, Batman, Misery? Yeah, there's a lot of people putting themselves in stories, changing the characters to be more like themselves. Yeah, it's the Punisher. And I never changed the Punisher. He's the ultimate male wish fulfillment figure to me. He's a slob. He doesn't care what anybody thinks. He doesn't let anybody push him around. He doesn't suffer fools. And he's got lots of guns. So, and money that isn't his. So what's not to love? he's I've always had a terrific affinity for Frank Castle, and as I always mention, I don't know what that says about me. But a lot of rest of you are Punisher fans too, so you share my affliction. But yeah, I guess he's my self-insert. He will speak for me. John Boo, a twin spin. Your stories seem to be more on the side of realism. Do you have a thing against the supernatural in your stories? No, I don't. I've written a lot of stuff in comics and prose, supernatural, like Nightmare on Elm Street. Really dug right in that. I've written a couple of horror novels, Gomer's zombie novel, Blooded, a vampire novel, both of which are available in this paranormal double pack on Kindle, and not available in print. I don't. Maybe I still have the print versions available. I'm not sure. That would be through Bruno Books. Take a look on Amazon. Actually, I should take a look on Amazon. But yeah, I mean, I'm fine with the supernatural as long as it makes sense, as long as there's something about it that is grounded in its own reality, which is important. I mean, I used in Conan, I used the supernatural quite a bit because it's kind of part of Conan. And early on, I had difficulties with magic. Magic. It's so fey. And what's it doing in Conan? I mean, a wizard. Come on. Oh, my God. Conan should be about blood and guts. And the only supernatural things you should meet are, monsters, Lovecraftian monsters. But, wizards were, part of the deal. Who's going to bring those Lovecraftian monsters forth? Plus, you needed a villain who had dialogue that you could, relate to as a human being. And I avoided any kind of supernatural early in the stories that I was writing for Savage Sword. And I told Gary Quapis, my most frequent collaborator, I said, Gary, I just can't get my head around this whole magic thing. And Gary, as Gary always does, had something very, very wise to say that I would never forget. And he said that, to me, magic works as long as there's a price to be paid. A price in the real world. And that clicked with me. I thought, well, yeah, that's right. I mean, like, I'm going to cast this spell, but it's going to cost me an eye. Or I'm going to cast this spell or summon this demon, but part of the magic is that I become disfigured. So there's always a price to pay. And that made it all work for me. So I was far more comfortable with supernatural. And that's how I approach every supernatural subject where there's a butcher's bill in the real world to be paid for the use of any kind of supernatural force of any kind. J. Haley Tang. I love Western movies, especially John Ford and Anthony Mann flicks, and the handful of Westerns Howard Hawks made. I love Western television, Wild Wild West, Bonanza, The Rifleman, which I checked out on your recommendation and am totally in love with now. I love Western comics, my favorites being Batlash and Jonah Hex, currently reading Doug Wildey's Rio for the first time. Also, Brubaker's Pulp was incredible, but I've read almost no Western novels. So where should I start with Western novels? I will track down and read whatever you recommend here post-haste. I'm getting desperate for good Westerns. Well, there's lots of Western novels, but like, Sturgeon's Law tells us 90% of anything is crap, so you want to avoid ones. And most Western novels are readable. They're perfectly readable. There's just nothing new there. These are three I'd recommend. Cowboy and the Cossack by Claire Huffaker. In fact, any Western by Claire Huffaker is good, but Cowboy and the Cossack is his undeniable masterpiece. It's about a bunch of Texas drovers brought to Tsarist Russia to drive a herd of Texas cattle, Texas Longhorns, across the Siberian wastes to a beleaguered fort. After that description, you want to read it, right? I want to reread it. It's awesome. Why this was never made into a movie, it's been optioned over and over and over again, I will never understand. But awesome novel. You got to check it out. It's absolutely my favorite Western novel, even though it doesn't take place in the West. Going to Texas by Forrest Carter. This is the basis of the movie The Outlaw Josie Wales. It's written with an authority All of the great dialogue that was in the movie is here present in the novel. It's one of the most faithful film adaptations of a novel I have ever seen in my life. But even if you've seen the movie a number of times, you're still going to want to read the book because it adds resonance to everything that appeared in the movie. Shane, the classic Shane by Jack Schaefer. This was something like every kid read in junior high when I was a kid. And a good solid Western, a short read. I mean, single sitting read, a real page turner. Again, even if you've seen the movie, it's worth reading. Other really good, reliable Western authors. I really like Gordon D. Sheriffs. He was very prolific paperback writer. Most of his stuff has been reprint today, so you don't have to pay extraordinary vintage paperback prices. And always a good action Western, particularly good about writing about the Southwest, about the Apaches, and things like that. Just brutal stuff, but good, and he could really pace a story. Another author I like is Milton Bass, and he wrote a series of books about a young gunfighter named Jory, and these are first-person stories told by Jory, and they kind of trace his career as from being an orphan to a gunslinger and regulator and things like that. But there's a real effort to make them feel real, feel realistic. It's like if Mark Twain wrote Western paperbacks, he would write something very much like the Jory series. Elmore Leonard wrote a whole bunch of really good Westerns before he turned to writing crime novels. My favorite of all of them is 40 Lashes Less One. It's a Western prison story with an awesome twist in the story. Great characters. Now, kind of graduating class, once you get into reading Western novels and all the rest of it, you want to check out, and I put his name here so you get the spelling correct. You want to check out an author called Ben Haas. Now, Ben Haas wrote under a number of names, extraordinarily prolific, wrote a lot of Westerns, wrote a lot of medical thrillers too, even wrote some sword and sorcery. But I suggest you Google Ben Haas, and there's many, many bibliographies which give you the titles of all of his Westerns. Number one amongst these is his series Fargo. It's set in like the pre-World War I period, and features this character named Fargo. He's a mercenary for hire. He's a gun runner, and these books contain some of the best action scenes I've ever read in my life. There's a book called Alaska Steel. It has my second favorite action scene of all time ever in a book. My first being the animal stampede at the beginning of Tarzan at the Earth's core. But just terrific muscular writing. And of course, he wrote under a number of different names: Richard Meade, Thornton Douglas, and many others. But if you look up Wikipedia, it'll not only give you a list of all his books, but also let you know which Fargos he wrote, because after his death, untimely death at 51, they had other writers write under the John Benteen house name, and they're not as good. Same for the Sundance series. He wrote a series called Sundance, and you want to make sure you get the Sundances written by Ben Haas. But they're all written under the name John Benteen, so it's hard to tell. So go to Wikipedia. And that's kind of the graduation class in Westerns for you. Interestingly enough, I found out just the other day that Howard Chaykin is adapting Hell on Wheels, one of the Fargo novels, into a graphic novel. He's currently crowdfunding it, and I'll try to put the link to that below because it's still got, I think, a couple of weeks to go on that one. I'm anxious to read it. I saw on the crowdfunding page, you can see some pages from it, and Howard really knocked himself out on this graphic novel. Kind of cool. I mean, he's not a guy I would have thought to adapt these, but he's perfect for it. Absolutely perfect. And if you care to, I've written a couple of Westerns myself. Snakehand, wrote with my partner, John Neal, my saddle bum buddy John Neal. We wrote Snakehand, and in the same shared universe of the Sidewinders, I wrote La Gringa. And I'm about halfway through a third Sidewinders novel called Gallows. So they're on Amazon, and they're also available from Archaven if you care to check them out. And that's your commercial for the week. If you want to get a hold of me with questions, suggestions, whatever, further questions about universe building or movie dialogue or whatever, you really want to get into the weeds, let's do it. Let's do it at brunobookstore@gmail.com. brunobookstore@gmail.com is the most reliable way to reach me with your missives. So that's it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Please subscribe if you get a chance. It really helps build the channel. And I will see you all down the road.